Okay, so here we are back to Photoshop layering and having fun and being creative. And of course, my first question is going to be, who has been practicing? Anybody? Yay, I see a couple of hands there. Excellent. And so, of course, my first concern is who's having trouble and what kind of trouble. So if we could start, I'll just go down the list here. And the first person on my list is Sherwood. Sherwood, can you tell me if you're having any issues?
Picking out pictures to work on.
Good.
That's my big, I have, 20,000 pictures on the computer. And when I look at them, it doesn't seem I can find, I found a few,
Okay.
but
Okay,
not a lot.
okay, that's a good question. And I know in your email, my friend, there were a couple of questions about taking multiple images into Photoshop, and we're going to go through that again. And if there's anything else, just speak right up, okay?
I did a fake Orton effect with Photoshop.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
I'll show it to you sometime.
Okay, good, good. Okay, Miss Susie, I think that you have been practicing. Tell me if you've run into any roadblocks.
Well, like Sherwood, I've gone through most of my old photos over the years. And honestly, it's kind of discouraging in a way because I look at what I've taken and I don't see, because I don't do a lot of landscape. I don't see a lot of photos. So I guess I need to get my brain in gear for, if I'm going to be doing some, I mean, you say you shouldn't be thinking, what picture can I take to layer? But how do I rethink how I take photos so that I can use the textures and layers?
Okay, all right. Well, we're going, since that's two people already, I'm going to point out a couple of different photos today. We're going to use a couple of different photos today than we did last time and see if we can't create another idea about how we can add textures to images. Okay. Miss Mary, any questions?
This isn't really a question, but I notice when I'm using the brush, I'm still really clumsy at it. It must take a lot of practice because if the brush has to be large and soft, then I'm bunking into something I don't want to bunk into. And the opacity has to be really low so it doesn't look too, it's just going to take a lot of practice. I can see that.
It does take practice, but I do want to recommend as well the Wacom pen. This little dealie.
Oh yeah, would you spell that one more time? I didn't
Yes,
write it
it's
down.
WACOM.
Okay.
And I'm looking for my tablet at the same time, and it has run away somewhere.
Do you use it on your iPad or does it come with its own tablet? I don't.
Comes with its own tablet. It is about if you get the very large one, which I actually recommend if you have enough desk space, it's about the size of a laptop.
Oh.
But it's, in fact, I know where my tablet is. Hold on just one second.
And while she's getting that, I'm going to get something.
I'm going to look up how much it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, where do you buy it? On Amazon?
B&H has it.
With
Who
who?
does?
B&H.
B&H.
You can get B&H or Adorama or Amazon.
Oh, okay.
They also carry them in the Apple store.
In it.
Welcome.
I'm not going in the Apple store.
Right.
So is that different than an iPad? What?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes.
What are we talking about?
Yes. So
Another computer device.
if you use this pen and this Wacom tablet, see how it has these buttons and things here?
Yeah.
These are all programmable for what you want them to do. I happen to be using the Intuos Pro model. Okay.
Okay.
Anyhow, it is much, much easier to control your brush or pen or anything at all in Photoshop after you get used to it with this little pen, because on the end you can see it has a nib here. okay?
Uh-huh.
And it comes with different nibs for different things. I haven't, I'm not a pro at this by any means, but I haven't figured out any reason to use the other, here's my pen, the other nibs for any reason. On the end of the pen, it does have a little clicker thing. Can everybody see that?
Right,
And
yeah.
that's like clicking with your mouse.
Oh, okay.
So how does that connect to your other device that you have your things on? Or is this like a separate laptop altogether?
Yes,
USB.
it's not a laptop because it doesn't do any computing or anything like that. But you download the software for it and then you connect with it via Bluetooth.
Okay.
Okay.
Now
And so as you're working on it, so you're just here in this black square and you're just like brushing, making circles, doing this kind of thing. And it's much more precise and easy to control because our hands are used to controlling a pen, probably much easier than a mouse to do brushing with.
Are you seeing the image on it?
I'm sorry, honey?
Are you seeing the image on your computer and that?
No, only on the computer.
Only on the computer.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So you're moving. You can see where you are on the computer, but you do your little strokes on the pad.
Exactly. Okay.
That's very interesting.
Yes, and they do come in a couple of different sizes. I don't have the very largest one. I have, I think, the down from the largest one, but I like it very much.
How does having a larger one make it better?
Bob, it is simply that the size of the larger one corresponds almost into a 1-to-1 ratio to the image that you're working on.
Oh, okay.
They come in little tiny sizes as well, where the writing space is only about this big. But if you're using a 23 or a 27-inch monitor, that's only about 25% of your image. So you're having to mentally translate, and it gets easier. But that 18-inch image squeezes down into a 6-inch square, and you have to make little tiny strokes that translate out to that 18-inch image. And so I have always found, and the pros will tell you, that if you have enough desk space, which is the issue, if you have enough desktop space, then getting the largest one that you're comfortable with, both with your wallet and on your desk, works the best.
Do you put it on top of your computer if you're working on your monitor? Like I have my computer on the left, and I can't imagine, can I put it right on top of that computer because I'm working it on my monitor? My computer's closed because I'm.
I don't know what you mean by putting it on
your
the computer.
Keyboard, Joanne? Do you mean your keyboard? Do you mean, can you put it on top of your laptop?
No, I have a separate keyboard. I'm just trying to think if I could put it on just on top of my computer, which is down because I'm looking at the monitor.
No, you want to have it over to the right. I just have mine off to the right of my keyboard. And sometimes I pick up my keyboard because I have a Bluetooth keyboard. It's wireless.
Oh, I could do that.
And then I have my, here, I'll try to show you. No, I can't. So then I just have my thing right smack in front of me.
Okay.
Okay.
Karen, do you use this for, if you're not layering, say just in Lightroom doing other things, or is it, yeah?
If I'm doing a serious workup on an image, I do use this. You know, I mean, I use my laptop, and believe it or not, I never ever use a mouse with my laptop. I actually paint with my finger and do all those things, but it's no fun. And so
that's what I've been doing, painting with my fingers.
It's too hard because if you imagine that the area on your finger pad, okay, and then if you can see, you know, how precise that tip is, and it can be very soft. That just because that tip is precise like that doesn't mean it's not a big soft brush. but you can make it any size you want and you can control it much easier.
Yeah.
Okay?
Karen, when you bring up Photoshop, there's some things at the top of the screen that are related to working with a pen.
That's a different thing. That is not this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's a tool in Photoshop that does a whole bunch of things that I don't ever use it with.
Okay.
Never, never. Now, there are plenty of people that do. People that want to draw and design and add and use a pen tip in various types of things. But it's much, much more for graphic designers than photographers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Also, I'm overwhelmed with learning so many new things at once. What would you say the learning curve with the Wacom is?
Oh, not much more than a couple of hours.
Okay.
And they're great
And
videos.
do you have an association with B&H by any chance?
I do not.
I wish you did.
Oh, I too. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So if you like, and after we get done Photoshop course, I'll brush up on my. I have a very bad habit that I will admit to you all, and that is I use all my tools for exactly what I need them for. And while there might be other things that they do, I'm not interested in knowing those things, which is not a great way to be. But I will brush up on my Wacom knowledge. And for any of you all that do decide to do a Wacom thing, after we get done with this class next week or the week after, I'll be happy to jump on and do a little practice with you. Okay?
That would be great.
Okay, cool.
Great.
All right. Miss Joanne, as we're going, oh, I'm sorry. Next person is Suzette. I have to keep my, oh, you guys are moving around depending on who's talking. Miss Suzette, do you have any issues with the layering?
My issue is that I'm still trying to play catch up, and I have been on your website watching the recorded Lightroom classes. So that's where I've been spending my time, because that's where I felt like my biggest weakness is.
Okay.
Because I've used, even though I'm learning lots from your Photoshop class,
Good.
I've used Photoshop mostly. So
Okay.
I'm a little bit more familiar with its abilities, even if you're teaching me little tricks that I never knew.
Great.
I'm kind of behind all of you relative to other things. So I'm trying to play catch up.
Okay, no worries then. And rest assured today, just like I promised you at the beginning of the course, we're going to go through everything from step 1 onward, okay? We're not making any shortcuts. I have no need nor reason to just gloss over and start, lickety split opening things and not going step by step by step in exactly the same manner, okay? Okay, Miss Ruth.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to that, because there seem to be some certain key steps that I'm missing. Sometimes I can't get the black to paint on my white mask.
Okay.
Sometimes I can't find my photo after I finished it and saved it.
Okay.
And so on. All kinds of little glitchy things.
Okay. And it's those little glitchy things that make us crazy. So that's what I'm here for. Very good. Thank you, Ruth. Miss Joanne?
I've been in the garden.
Okay. All right. If questions pop up while we're doing this, now you know, and I trust you to just speak up.
No, and I have been playing with it.
Good.
But
you've also been in the garden. Very good.
So
all
it
right.
started
Miss
to rain.
Jolie?
I am still finishing my photo book and about to send it to you. So I think I'm done with it.
Well, congratulations.
So I haven't done any layering, but I'm thinking about it. So, and like everybody thinking about what photo would work.
Okay. Well, no, this conversation, this conversation is so valuable to me because it lets me know what I need to focus on. And we are going to start today, as I said, step by step, one by one. But before we do any of that, we're going to talk about the photos. Okay. All right. Okay, Miss Susie. Oh, we already talked.
You're muted, Susie. You're muted. You're muted.
Okay.
Unmute yourself.
No, we're fine because Susie already told me what she did. Yeah, I'm sorry. Miss Sandy.
After our talk the other day, I'm playing much more freely, and yesterday was, I think, some positive results. So no, it's just more miles.
Great, that's wonderful.
More time.
So Sandy and I had a wonderful conversation about being just absolutely carefree in choosing what layers and what textures and things we're going to use in the beginning. It doesn't matter. What matters so much is that we teach ourselves how these texture layers and other things react with our photos, with the colors, and with the blending modes. That's what's important. It's not about going out and trying to find the right texture for that image in that moment, because you have a lot of play and a lot of trial and error in front of you, and we just can't get hung up on, I'm not picking the right one. Okay. Okay. Mr. Bob?
One of the things that's already been mentioned is bringing more than one Lightroom image into Photoshop at the same time.
Great.
Another is a step I think I mentioned. I thought you said that you could highlight a Lightroom image and then hit Command-E and it would go into Photoshop, but I must have missed something because that doesn't happen.
Okay.
Let's see. I worked on an image and had to then close the image in Photoshop in order to completely close Photoshop. So the image is saved there, but is there a way so that the image will automatically go back into Lightroom?
Yes.
And the last question is, I was trying to use two different photographs. One is of a bridge, the other was of a doll that I saw someplace. And I would like to use the doll to layer onto the bridge picture. And the question is, how do you make the doll images small enough so that it looks
normal,
appropriate?
Okay. That's a great question. And it's got a super, super easy answer. And that is using Command T to transform.
Okay.
Okay.
Can
but
I
we'll
ask
do
a
that.
follow-up question?
Yes.
But then you have to blend it in, because
Yes.
when I brought in a second image, you know, it stuck out like a sore thumb and I wanted to blend it in.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that. Okay. Okay, so blending, let me go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to talk about how we choose photos that we may want to do texture layers with. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see this wonderful, beautiful archway in Venice?
Yes.
Okay. So I've put this one up first because ever since I've made the image, I've wanted to texture it, and I haven't done anything to it yet. And so I brought it in today to show you that this is an image, because it has a lot of negative space. While it's fairly complicated on the right-hand side with the march of the columns, it's not very complicated on the left-hand side. And I do like the stuccoed walls, you know, that they're showing their age. But I think that we could enhance that a bit. And so this is an image, again, that I've always wanted to texture for just those reasons. And I think that we can just layer on those bits of textures, much like we did with the image from Havana, Cuba. If you all remember, we had this image to start with. Sorry. We had this young lady against this wonderful wall, and then we ended up with this. And I still think that vignette's a little bit too strong, but I was taking my cues from the color and the texture that existed in this upper part of the wall, as well as the lower part of the staircase and the shadow falling on the staircase. This is actually gray and white marble, but because it's in shadow, there's a blue tonality to it. So picking this image, I would think that adding a texture that looks, let's see what we've got here. We might think about this texture, which might give it a strange kind of look. We might think about this texture. If we wanted to make it much warmer, although I don't think I do because it has snow in it, so I'm going to say no to that one. Might think about this just for the way it looks up close. Or if we really wanted to highlight the snowy light kind of feeling, we could think about something like that. Or we could even go here. So there are a bunch of options there, and I think we'll stay with the very cool tones that are in the image already, and I think I'll get rid of that one. So that's how I would be thinking about choosing that image. Let's do something completely different. What if I were to say, well, what about this pink tulip? Okay, it might be kind of fun. And in that case, I think that I would be looking to do something very misty and cool, something like this. I could see what the colors do in this and how they play together. And then I do, again, I like this metallic kind of thing that's happening in this one. So I might take a look and see what that looks like. But with the tulip, in addition to choosing the textures, I'm going to be thinking hard about using the different blending modes. And with the tulip particularly, I might be investigating the screen blending mode, which we haven't used yet. Okay? But we can see, if we just have a look at this, let's get out of here, at this image, that's a very simple image, right? And this one is not so awfully complicated either. And then I'm going to do something that I haven't ever done before, which is to investigate texturing this image. So let's see that big. This is an image that I took in Spain when we were standing in rows upon rows upon rows of poplars. I think they were poplars. And now I don't know, because that's not the right leaf for a poplar. So that's a different kind of tree. Anyhow, we were standing in these rows and rows and rows, and then I looked down at my feet and I saw these beautiful tones in these decaying leaves. And I just want to see what a texture layer is going to do on that. And specifically, I want to see what this texture layer will do. Okay?
Yeah.
In
And yeah.
the photo of the leaves, is it not just the shapes, but the tonality, which is all kind of similar?
Yes. Yes. I just want to see how they blend together and using what blending mode it might be. And, you know, I'm kind of secretly hoping that I like it just fine without the texture, but I'm curious. And curiosity is a very good thing in what we're doing. I might try that too. Okay. And I might go out to Photoshop and get some other ones.
I love your original photo. I think it's so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So there we have an idea. We've looked at, oh, and we hadn't talked about this. This again is a fairly simple photo, and it might be one, if we get to it, that I want to try to texture. Okay. So we're thinking about this, this, and this, and we'll see where we go with that. Okay.
Karen, I have a question. Would you ever consider using the leaves themselves as a texture? I mean,
absolutely. In fact, let's do that with our Venetian thing.
With this, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be great.
I think it might be really interesting.
It might.
Right.
Yeah.
The best thing about this is the curiosity for what it could be like. All right. Because we're going to do it exactly the same way as we do everything else. Now, I do want to caution you about using images together that are of a very different scale. And so when we think about doing these two things, we see images that are a completely different scale. We've got giant leaves on a small hallway or an arch loggia. I was trying to find the Italian word. And so maybe, but let's be curious. Let's do it. Let's be bold, okay? Okay. So Bob, when I have two images together, meaning more than one, I'm going to go to grid view. They're both highlighted, and I'm going to hit Command E. And this, it's asking me, because my Photoshop isn't the latest version, I want to render using Lightroom. And now we are preparing files, which means it picked up both of them for editing, and it's going to take them into Photoshop. Okay, so here we are. And remember, the very first thing that we do when we've taken multiple images in from Lightroom in this manner, it always pins them up here on this bar. And so I'm going to go to Window, Arrange, Float All in Windows. And I'm going to say that my loggia is my background image. So first off, I'm going to expand that frame so that I can see all the way around it, right? Everyone with me so far?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. And now I'm going to click on my other image that I want to use as a texture layer. So now it is active, okay? And it's highlighted over here on the right. So now I can click and drag onto my other image. And because I have my move tool, can everyone see my big arrow? Okay. I've chosen my move tool at the top, but anytime, let me show you. So now I'm in a brush tool. Can you see that? I have my little brush active. But if I hold down, okay, so there's my brush, it's a circle. But if I hold down my space bar, that gives me my hand, which is not working. So I'm going to go back to my move tool. Photoshop gets glitchy sometimes, okay? Go back to my move tool, which is the very first tool on the top of your tool bar here, okay? So back to my move tool and slide this over up into the corner. And when you see that pink line on the upper and left edge, which is where I've butted my image up against, you know that you're right on the edge of your image. If you don't see that pink line, then you've left some area out. And that's very embarrassing. So you definitely want to see both pink lines or go out over, okay? But start with the pink lines, and then I'm going to hit Command T, and I'm going to stretch this image out. It was the same ratio as my image behind because I don't crop in funny shapes. And so there it is, and I'm going to click my arrow. You can either hit Enter or click that arrow that was at the top. So now my leaves are covering up my loggia. And I'm going to move us, put us over here. And so now we have to start working with blending modes, right? So I'm just going to go slowly because this is a new kind of thing. This is darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, darker color, lighten. I kind of like that. Screen, I kind of like that too. Color dodge, no, 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 don't like those. Overlay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And soft light.
Yeah.
Okay. So It's funny because it's interesting going down through these different blending modes, because in certain areas of the image, I like certain blending modes.
Exactly.
Like in this area, I love the upper right-hand corner using screen. I really like that. In overlay, I think that'll just have to be screen, you know, using our opacity, bring it down. Soft light, maybe. What we're going to have to decide is what to do about that leaf that's right in the middle. So let's start with overlay.
In overlay, I like the way it brings out the snow.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because that's not real obvious in the original image. I mean, I knew it was there because I was there, but I just like the way this one brings out the snow.
Yes, and it's bringing out our snow because it's creating contrast. We've darkened our columns with the darker tones that were in the leaves, and now we can see that white. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to move this up a little bit and over and make it a little bigger for everyone. And so,
I love how the columns look.
Yes, it's
columns are
interesting.
cool.
It looks like they've all been painted with a continual scene.
Isn't that neat?
Absolutely perfect.
So let's try to make this not so much a texture, but a composited image, which is what we're about. And I'm going to put a layer mask on. And now, Ruth, here you go. My brush is black. You see over here on the left-hand side where my black is the color that's on top. And you can change that by hitting the X key. Just toggling the X back and forth. X, X will go from black to white, black to white. It's much easier than coming over here and clicking on the elbow arrow, because sometimes that's hard to, you know, with your mouse, it's hard to get to. But of course, I'm going to choose my brush, and I'm going to make my brush much bigger. I need my keyboard down here. Okay, so can everyone see how big my brush is now? Okay, and now I have to go up here and move this down. My opacity is at 23%, and my flow is at 50%. That's all good. So I'm thinking what I want to do is just kind of brush out the center a little bit to remind us that this is still a loggia, but leave almost everything on the right-hand side. And if I want to brush out the center, I want to come in. What I'm doing basically is creating a way to get into the image. And so here we were before, and here we are after. I think this is a little strong still. I love the right-hand side of this image. The left-hand side is making me curious.
Karen, could you talk about whether you're using soft little clicks or big long lines with your brush?
I'm doing kind of a click and moving it about an inch. So little strokes, okay? In this instance, that's what I'm doing. Now, the first one I did, I took a great big stroke, just, you know, on the diagonal straight into the background. But now I'm going to take a much smaller brush, and I'm going to try to get rid of a little bit of the strength of that stem back there without totally losing the texture. I just think that stem is too strong, and it's right on the line of the
it's sort of distracting.
Yes, it's right on the line of the lanterns. I'll tell you what else is distracting is that stupid sign back there, but I told Mary to go move it and she just wasn't about to. So. Okay,
You should have
so
asked me.
before, I should have asked Joanne, is right. Before, after, before, after.
Well, you can always clone that out when you get to that point.
Yeah, yeah, it would be a pain. And if you cloned it, then you'd be, you'd be like, okay, where am I going to pull texture from, and that kind of thing. So I kind of like this, but I'm kind of curious to see what will happen if I duplicate this layer. All right, and notice when I duplicate the entire layer that it brings up this exact same mask as well. Okay, so that's because we're using the same image and I already have a mask. When I pull it down to duplicate, which is the second little icon from the right, not your trash can, but your duplicate layer, then it automatically makes my layer mask. Okay, but I want to change this blending mode. And I want to see what it does. So if I put it at screen, you can see that it lightens everything up. I'm not liking it. And if I do soft light, let me turn this on. So soft light has just made it look more like a Tim Burton film still. It's very, very punchy. And so let's drag this opacity back about 40%. And here's before, and here's after. And I'm actually kind of okay with that. Before, after. Before, after. So, yeah. There's some things that I don't like in this image, and I'll just point them out. I don't like that this stem bisects the image right here. Okay, that I'm not a big fan of. And yes, I could go ahead and get rid of that. And I don't like this big stem back here. So I'd have to do some fairly major surgery on those two pieces. And I don't want to take our time with it, but it would be just a matter of doing a clone layer, getting our clone tool. And when I do cloning this particular, then of course I'm going to go in at about 100% and start doing a clone at this point. Okay. I'll do a few steps just so you can see. So when we do our clone layer, it's opposite of what we do in Lightroom. And that is that using our option key, we have to tell Photoshop where to pull the cloning material from. So I'm going to go just above this stem, and then you have to click it. Okay, it's not just holding the option, but you have to click that area, just one click. And then you can start going down here. And right away, I don't like that doubling up of that area. So cloning in Photoshop, the key to it is continually changing where you are dragging material from. Okay?
And why do you have to keep changing?
It makes it look much more natural, Mary.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now you don't have to like change every little stroke, but it does help you to keep a very natural look.
Karen, on this particular image, you've just got a round brush. Would
That's
you not
correct.
change the shape in cloning it, since it's?
No, I don't know that I've ever changed the shape of my brush. I will make it bigger and smaller, but the round helps me because it's such a very soft brush. Again, let me pull it someplace. The greatest effect of the brush is going to be right in the center. It's like in Lightroom where we have our feather, you know, right in the very center in that small Lightroom, we have a dual circles, concentric circles. the interior circle applies 100% of the effect. And from the edge of that interior circle out to the exterior circle, it goes from 100% to 0. Photoshop is not that linear in that fashion. They just have a soft or a hard brush, which we determine in, how we want to use it. I'm going to go back down and see what we've got and see, here's before, here's after, before, after. And so I'm going to have to do a little bit of work. I don't mind any of this. I think that all looks fine. It's a little bit too light in this area, my cloning. See right in here, it's too light. My material was too light. I need to choose a darker tonality, maybe from down here, and just blend that in across. And then I'd have to do the same work back here if I wanted to. But the key to cloning in Photoshop, again, is to use your option key to make your selection number 1 and then click once, but continually, almost continually changing that to make this look as natural as it possibly can. Okay. Okay, now if we want to save this back in Lightroom, we're going to hit Command S. But here's the trick. It's not going to save it in our collection where we brought these images from. It's going to save it in our file structure where the original image came from. This is how most people get messed up in Lightroom, thinking it's not saving my images the right way. If we brought it in from a collection, I'm just going to hit Command S, it will not save it back in the collection. It saves it in the original file structure by your background image. And now I'm going to show you how to find that image in Lightroom. Okay? As soon as we're done saving.
Thought for a moment you were frozen.
No.
Yeah.
Happily, no. I think my drive is telling me that it wants to be copied onto a new drive because it's being very slow. There we go. Okay. All right, so I can close this. It's done saving. And I can close this because I'm not going to use that. And then I can click back in Lightroom. And as you can see, we're here in the collection where we started from. And that image is nowhere to be found. Okay. We've got a PSD of this image because we opened it in Photoshop. And we've got, oh, I'm sorry. Now, how does that happen?
Yeah.
It's there.
In your collections.
Well, I'm very happy to see this, but I think it must be a new feature in the latest Lightroom that it saves in the collection as well as by the original image.
I need to ask a question about that. So, but you use 2 different images. What's it going to save it next to in the original folder?
As your background image, meaning your image on the bottom. If I choose to now go and texture this image with regular textures, because this image is going to be on the bottom, it's going to save it with this image, which happens to be number DSC5317.
Okay.
Okay.
Karen?
Yes.
When do you need to synchronize your Lightroom to make sure that the Photoshop, I mean, I thought you had to synchronize when you brought in a photo from Photoshop into Lightroom.
No.
When do you synchronize in Lightroom?
I synchronize settings, but I don't sync anything else. It's settings for, our developing settings and that kind of thing. I've never had a call to synchronize anything else.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
I've been synchronizing too.
I'm sorry, Joanne?
I went from Michelle to synchronize to Lightroom.
Okay, then tell me, ladies, when are you thinking you need to synchronize?
Well, I thought when I did a photo and I saved it from Photoshop, I thought I had to synchronize my folders, or if I bring in a photo from maybe my desktop or someplace else, I thought I needed to synchronize in Lightroom to find it.
No,
Okay.
that is not what synchronize is about.
Okay.
When you bring in, this is a very good point. When you bring in a photo from your desktop, meaning not from your Lightroom library, all right? Well, let me ask you, this becomes very confusing. Are you saying, Susie, when you bring in that photo into Photoshop?
I'm trying to, it must be when I've got a photo on my desktop that maybe it was, excuse me, emailed to me. I put it on my desktop. I bring it into Photoshop. Photoshop doesn't know where to put it actually in my Lightroom because it's never been in Lightroom. I'm not sure when I synchronize. I'm gonna have to pay attention. I'm not really familiar with when and how to synchronize, but that wouldn't work the way I just described because there's no place for it to go in Lightroom.
Exactly. In order for a photo to be recognized in Lightroom, it must be imported into Lightroom.
Right.
Okay. And so if you bring a photo in to Photoshop and you do whatever you want to do to it with textures, and it came from your desktop or some other file structure, meaning not your Lightroom catalog, if you hit Command S, Photoshop will save it right back where it came from.
Okay.
Okay. And if you're not sure, or if you want to put it in a different place, that's when you go to Photoshop and you hit File, Save As, because then you have to tell it where to go. But don't ever do that if you brought your photo in from Lightroom, because if you go to File, Save As, you won't save it automatically back in Lightroom. The only way to do that, let me get my Photoshop up here. The only way to save a photo, let's just open this one. File, Save As is the only thing that'll come up here because it doesn't know what to do with it. It doesn't have a background image. We didn't bring it in that manner. You know, it's just sitting here from before in Photoshop. Let me do one straight from Lightroom because this is not effective. Okay, let's bring this in. And then we're gonna bring this. And this, and this, and this. And we're gonna go to Grid. Bob, I have multiple files now that are highlighted in Grid. And because you can't do it from loop view, you have to do multiples from grid view. And then we can hit Command E. And we're going to edit a copy of Lightroom adjustments. Okay.
Shoot. Chrissy, would you take this one?
Even with the texture, it's with the Lightroom adjustment, right?
It was only asking me about that first file.
Tulip.
Okay. Because the others don't have any adjustments to them.
I think the synchronizing I've been doing might have been with the iPhone photos, where I have a collection of iPhone edits.
That could very well be. Okay, so now we have everything pinned up on this top bar right here. So what do?
Float all in Windows.
Window, Arrange, Float all in Windows. Okay, very good. Thank you, Joanne. So here's our tulip image. And I want to play with screen with this. I'm not sure why, but I just want to. And I want to play with this metallic texture. So I'm going to open up my frame so I can see my edges. Then I'm going to click on the metallic. And interestingly, when I'm looking at this metallic texture, I don't necessarily want this scratchy area over here, but I do want this area, all right? So this is an instance where we don't want to make our texture the same size as our image. We just want to use some of our texture. So I'm going to drop that onto there, and I'm going to bring it up here to the area that I kind of want it. And then I'm going to hit Command T. And remember, then I'm going to hit my Shift key because I'm going to stretch it and do weird things to it. And then I'm going to hit my Shift key over here because remember, I don't want these scratchy parts. So I'm just going to try to see if I can't not get very many of those. Shift, bring that over. These are high-res JPEG files, and you can do what I'm doing to a certain extent. Okay. So I'm going to take it up even further. I'm going to bring it down. Now I've gotten rid of most of those scratchy things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to click my check mark and say yes to commit my layer. And here we are. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go down through my blending modes. There's multiply, just makes it look like looking through a dirty screen door. Color burn, linear burn, darker, lighten, screen. That's what I'm looking for. Color dodge. Linear dodge, that's weird. Overlay, soft light, hard light. That's interesting for a different thing. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to screen. All right. And I'm just going to bring my opacity down a little bit because I'm trying to make this very, very super pastel-y. I mean, it's already pastel, but I want it to be very, very light and soft. And I think that's a little bit too much. Let's have it right about here. So before, after. Now, again, we're not about making masterpieces here. We're about trying different things, okay? And so now I want to try this grungy texture on top of this. I'm going to, remember, this is my active layer. I've clicked on my new image, so I can go over to my right and drop it onto there. And then I can Command T. Bring that down, hold my Shift key and kind of resize it this way, and then click OK. And now go down through my blending modes. Ugly, uglier. That's an overlay, and that's a soft light. I'm kind of liking soft light. It's almost like looking through a frosted mug of root beer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. And I might even, because I like it a lot, just for grins, I'm going to double it up and see what it looks like with a double soft light. Because doubling soft light is still very different than using soft light versus overlay. Okay? And my doubling, I might decide to take that second layer down just a little bit, about 50% opacity. So here's our original image. And then we added the screen layer of that metallic kind of feel to it. And then we added soft light with this grungy looking frame thing. And all of those were at 100%. And then on the top, we added soft light again, but only at 48%. And it just slightly deepened this area that we were getting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What was your opacity the first time around?
43% for the screen on the bottom, 100% for the first soft light,
okay,
and 48% for the second soft light.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Now I'm going to really throw you for a loop. Okay. I am going to duplicate my second soft light image. So now I'm going to have 3 soft light images on there. but I'm going to hit Command T to transform, and I'm going to go over to Edit, down to my transform, and I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. Now, why did I do that? Because I want to bring in the the top and the left, because as I was looking, let's say okay to that. As I was looking at these layers, I'm really liking the frame, but the frame is really only showing up on the bottom and the right-hand side. And so, okay, fine, that's nice. But now I want to go and put the other one on, and I've only got it at 48%, so I'm going to put it at 100%. And now we're starting to see it over here. Okay? And so because we are starting to see it over there, I'm going to pull it down and duplicate it again. And now I've got a rectangle. Does everybody see the difference? Now, it might be that it's a little too strong right down here. Okay, so let's put a layer mask on that. Move this out of the way. Let's go down here and grab our layer mask, our rectangle with our hole in the middle. And Ruth, I'm going to make sure I've got my black brush. My color is black. I can change it again by hitting X, but I want to have black because I want to block out some of the effect. And make sure that I have my brush tool. And go down here and make my brush big and soft. Okay, really big and soft. Maybe a little bit smaller. And I just want to brush out where I feel like it's gotten too heavy. So I've got my opacity at 23%, my flow still at 50%, and I'm just going to brush out this L shape. So it's not overpowering everything else that was going on in the image. Everybody see my mask where I've just brushed out softly the L shape? Okay. So there I was before, and it just looks lopsided to me. And so I added the first layer at 100%, which was at the screen. And then I added the second one, which helped me to underscore this effect right in here, which is what I wanted. Now, if I wanted to make that even a little bit darker, now I'm going to go to my adjustment layer. Remember our half circle here, one half black, one half white. And I'm going to choose a curves layer. And my objective is to darken this side of the image just a tiny bit. So we can see that most of the tonality in the image is up here in the lighter areas. So I'm just going to bring it down. Okay, and I know that's a whole lot, but I want to see what it is that I'm working with. So there's my curves layer that I brought down. And now what am I going to do? I'm going to invert my mask. I'm going to block out the whole change that I just did by hitting Command I. So I've inverted my mask so that whole thing is not showing across. And I'm going to bring my brush. I'm in my mask, but I can't paint a black brush on top of a black mask. So I'm going to hit the letter X, turn my brush to white to reveal the change that I made. But remember, my brush is only at 23%, so I'm only going to reveal a little bit. A little bit right there. Actually, that's too much.
Can you remind me what you're revealing from the layer below?
I'm sorry?
You're revealing from the layer below?
I'm revealing from the curves adjustment. I'm revealing from this. It has nothing to do with the layer below. I'm revealing the curves adjustment, which is showing up to the left of our layer mask, what I did. Before, after. Before, after. Now I feel like I have a rectangular frame on my flower. Does that make sense for everyone?
Mhm.
So the concept here being that anything we can do in Photoshop, we can do to our texture layer. And in this instance, I liked that it had the frame on the lower, on the right and on the bottom, but I wanted that frame on the other side too. And so I took my texture layer on these two layers, okay? And I just rotated it 180 degrees. All right, I'm gonna walk back through that with you because it's really, there's one thing in here that's super, super important. So here we had our last layer that we put on in soft light at 48%, okay? I copied it up to the next layer. Then I hit Command T for transform, okay? Now it's already been done, so we have to imagine. I hit Command T, and then I went over to Edit, Transform, Rotate 180 degrees. You can rotate it however you want to rotate it, but in this case, I just wanted it, you know, to go halfway around the circle. Now, what's the key here? The key is that we go to Edit. We don't go to Image, because if we go to Image and we were to, well, on a texture layer, it won't do it. But if you were stuck here and you went to image rather than edit, you could rotate the whole thing.
Tulip included.
Okay. Now it's going to rotate the whole canvas. Well, we don't want that. Okay. So I'm going to hit Command Z. So when you go to duplicate texture layers and that kind of thing, and you want to do rotating, you must go to Edit to do your transformations, because it is only editing that layer. It's not editing the entire image, which is made up of all of those layers. Okay?
Yep.
So again, you can see that this is yet one more way that we can take a texture layer and manipulate it. Or another, excuse me, or another image layer. Okay? Texture layer, image layer, all the same. All the same. Okay?
Very good.
How did you get that curve layer in there?
Ah, very good. So I'm going to take it out and I'm going to put it back in, okay? So I'm going to drag it down to my trash. And here I am on the top of my image. I've put in all of my things to make my rectangle, but I want it to be darker. So I go down to my cookie, my little black and white half circle thing, which is where all of our adjustment layers on. And if you hover over that long enough, Photoshop will tell you, create new fill or adjustment layer. So I'm going to click on that, and that gives me the choice of all of these different adjustments. And I'm going to use curves because it's fairly simple. And in the area up here of my lighter tones, not down here where there's no tones, but up here, I'm going to draw that down. All right. And I'm going to make it a big adjustment so that when I'm painting and revealing my effect, I have something to reveal. But I don't want it to look like that. So if I hit Command I, it inverts my mask. Okay, I'm going to show you again, because whenever we make an adjustment, whenever we put an adjustment layer on here, it doesn't matter what kind it is, there's a levels adjustment right up on top. It automatically adds the mask, okay? And so I don't want everything showing through. I just want to peel away some layers to show a little bit. And so I'm going to hit Command I. Again, I am highlighted on my mask, Command I, and it blocks out all of that effect. But if you click on the icon for the curves, you can see that the effect is still there. It's just being hidden by a black mask. So I'm going to highlight my mask, and I'm going to paint with white inside my mask at a low opacity to reveal the change that I made to the strength that I wanted. That's a little strong.
Karen, I have a question.
Please.
If you completed this and you looked at it and you said, okay, I've done everything, and then you looked at it and perhaps you thought that you didn't like the white line at the horizontal white line at the top of the tulip, and you wanted to blend that or something, would you have to go back down to a previous layer and do it there, and then would that adjustment
you would have to. That white line is present in our texture layers, in every one of them.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can see that it's right here. All right. And so instead of correcting every single texture layer, I think that I would go on top with adding a layer and cloning it. That way you only have to do it once rather than doing it here and copying that layer mask and that kind of thing, because this looks to be a fairly easy clone. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see what we get here.
Karen, when you paint with the black, you're taking stuff away.
Exactly.
When you paint with the white, you're putting stuff back. Is
No,
that right?
no, I'm sorry. So when you paint with black, you're blocking. Okay. So here in this layer mask, when I was painting with black, I was blocking some of the effect of what was happening in this lower corner on the bottom and on the right hand side, because it got too strong from all of the layers. Okay. In this instance, where I put my curves adjustment, which was very strong, here's my curves adjustment that I made. Well, I don't want to have to paint all of that out. It makes much more sense to block it all out with a black mask and then just paint it in with a white brush, because white reveals. Black blocks and white reveals. Okay. So then, Susie, if we wanted to take a little bit of that white line out of up there, then I would go over here, grab my clone tool, go into my image, let's say 50%, bring it in. Now we've got to find that white line.
At the
There
top.
it is.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah. And so I want to have my clone tool at a nice size. And I'm going to hit my Option key and say, this is where I want to grab tonality from. And you don't want to do this perfectly, because there's nothing perfect about any of this.
Karen, why do you prefer clone rather than heal?
In Photoshop, cloning, it's, if we were healing this, Bob, we would be taking out a dark spot and healing it with the tonality that's around it. And we're not doing that in this instance. What we're doing is matching, in other words, we're not healing spots here. We're just adding some tonality on top of where there wasn't very much. And so the healing tool wouldn't be the right choice for this image. If it had a dark, dark blob right here, and I just wanted to cover that blob and kind of match the tone around here, then I could use the healing tool. But for this, it's not the right thing, because we're trying to just add more texture. And for instance, right here, we come down to the bottom, and I'm just grabbing a little bit of that color and adding it. Now see, I don't like that clone, so I'm going to go out there and grab that. And getting rid of that white stripe across there.
Could you save the part of the texture that you've cloned? Could you save the texture that you've cloned as a new texture? In other words, you put work into the texture here. Can you save that as a preset?
No, no. You have it as your cloned layer, and at this point, it's affecting every layer below it. Okay? So there's no reason to copy this onto any other layer, because being on the top means that it is affecting it's having an effect on everything below it. Absolutely everything.
Okay, but can you save all the work you've done as a new texture?
Save this layer
well,
as
I want to use it on a, no, I want to use it on a different photo.
Yes, you could. You would save it as an image. If you just wanted to use that texture, you could, see, it gets funny then because we have this up here. You would eliminate your background image and flatten this and save it. But I think that's a couple steps.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. But you would want to take the clone layer off of that, because this clone layer is only particular to this image.
Got it.
Okay. So before, after, before, after. Okay. And again, because it's all grungy all over, this is not the type of image that there's nothing perfect about any part of this image. So taking it out does take that distraction out particularly well down here, and moderately well up here. Okay. And because I have some compulsive obsessive tendencies, I'm just going to fix that a little bit.
Most photographers do, don't you
Yeah.
think?
Okay. Okay. So there we were. We did our new concept this time was to transform a texture layer or 2 or 3 or 9. And also layering up. You know, we had that first in overlay, but then we did a couple layers in soft light, and we saw how the soft light stacked on top of each other affected the image. The point being, don't be afraid to duplicate your layers over your texture layers. They do have an interesting effect that overall, if I had to describe it, I'd say that even though the effect from soft light is very, it's not harsh, it gets deeper when we duplicate the soft light layer. And I will say once again, if you spend time, and I encourage you to spend time on the Flypaper Textures blog, you will see that they often duplicate the same layers on top of each other, just to get a little more, a little bit more depth in the layered texture. And so when you go to their blog, you see the recipe under the image that they've created, and you'll see soft light at 78%, and the next one will be soft light at 15% or some other percentage. And it has a pleasing effect. So don't be afraid to do that, is all I'm saying. Okay.
This may be an elementary question, but I'm trying to wrap my head around the saving process, because having never used Lightroom, you know, when I'm in Photoshop and I would do make a new creation there, and I would save as, because I wasn't trying to affect the original.
Correct.
Now, it seems like I have to rethink this completely, because if I save as, I'm going to choose a different place to save it.
And Lightroom's not going to know where it is.
Right. And if I choose save, is it affecting the original? Is the original still fine and plain and simple?
Yep. Sure enough.
That part scares me a little bit, that I'd be saving and screwing up my original photograph.
I understand. Lightroom never, ever, ever, ever does anything to your original image. So in this instance, we've got a bunch of layers. It's going to take a while. I'm going to hit Command S, and that is saving it. Command S is saving it right back into Lightroom. And now, I think, thanks to the new version, in the collection as well, which is really nice. Now, I want to warn you, if you brought your image in from someplace other than Lightroom, if you just double-clicked an image that you had on your desktop, or you went directly into Photoshop and you double-clicked an image that had been opened before, Command S does not work. Please maintain your workflow that you go to Lightroom and you open up your original photo or your PSD photo as an original and work in the linear manner each time, okay? Because 99% of the time when people say it didn't go back into my Lightroom, it's because it wasn't opened from Lightroom. Now, that's not always the case because 99% leaves that 1% of time. And so then we look at our image number and we go back into Lightroom and we find it.
Does it make sense to be able to do both? For instance, let's say I wanted to save this image somewhere, like I'm planning to use it for a specific show. So I want to save it in a file that I've already created for a possibility for a show. So if I save as to it, could I then come back and just save it and it'll go back to Lightroom?
No, if you're going to do that twice, which I don't recommend, and I'm going to explain why in just a moment. If you're going to do that, do your save command first, Command S, because it leaves it, it doesn't close it, okay? Then it's going to go right back into Lightroom where you want it. And then you can do File Save As and put it someplace else if you want to. Now, the reason I don't recommend that, and I'm going to close this because it's a 2 GB file, okay? The reason I don't recommend that, Suzette, is because if we're looking at our photo in Lightroom, and here it is, happily, we're looking at it from a collection. And collections in Lightroom are the perfect place to do what it was that you were just speaking about. If you had, I'm going to create a new collection, okay? And I'm going to call it Show Images, July, all right? And I've checked Include Selected Photo, which is just, there's a couple of them selected. Let's just do that, Create. And so here we are. These are the ones that I had selected. So they're all showing up down here, okay? But let's say that I wanted to, I was in this collection and I wanted to pull in this original and this original as well. All I have to do is click and drag. And now they're in that collection as well. I have not increased the memory that my machine needs because they are not duplicated files. Lightroom is a database and it always keeps your file, your original file, your, in my case, an ARW file, which is a Sony RAW, intact. It only writes a set of instructions to it to do all of these marvelous things we're doing. So you're not duplicating and duplicating and duplicating with all these different versions. You can use your collections and you can create as many different versions as you want by hitting the Create Virtual Copy, which is Command apostrophe. You can have as many different versions of that as you want. You could even have a collection that says, we could call it Venice Loggia. Okay, and I'm going to uncheck that. I'm going to create that, and then that would mean that I could drag this image down to Venice Loggia, and I could create as many different versions of that as I wanted to create it, and always have my collection right there. And we're not duplicating files. We don't have versions strung out everywhere else in different file folders and that kind of thing where we have to remember where they are. This, for me, aside from the Adobe Camera Raw that we are able to do in Lightroom, this is the strongest feature that it has.
And Karen, when you did that, if this Loja picture you wanted also in the show image, you can have it in multiple places, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because I had show images July where I brought that from, and I just clicked it and dragged it right down to my Venice Loja.
Okay.
Okay.
Staying in the first one.
Yes.
Also.
It's in my show images collection, and it's also still, because this is my collection that I had created a couple of days ago, in my very first texture group.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It is an incredibly useful tool that Lightroom gives us, because before, and I remember the days of the Adobe Bridge, believe me, I had folders and files and things just, you know, absolutely everywhere. And it was always a time-consuming effort to find out where my originals were, and then to remember not to mess up my original. Okay. In Lightroom, it never, ever, ever, ever touches your raw file. You will always have your raw file and your PSD. You see right beside us here, we have our Venice file. And so I'm just going to click it and drag it into show images, and I'm going to drag it into Venice Loja. So now I've got my two versions in here, and I've also added it into my show images. Okay.
So if we also have JPEGs that we work from, because some of us aren't religious about shooting in RAW.
You're going to get religion.
Yes, I am going to get religious.
Okay.
We have JPEG files. Does the same rule apply? It won't touch the original? Okay,
Yes.
just want to make sure. Okay.
Because iPhone would, if you had iPhone images, right, they would just be treated that way.
Yes, but now with the 11, you can shoot RAW in iPhone.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's why.
Where do you find that setting to be able to shoot in RAW on your iPhone?
I would consult the Oracle, Susie, because I don't have an 11. I have an older phone, but I know that it's possible. And I think you might have to use it through the camera, not through the iPhone camera app, but through the Camera Pro app. And it'll allow you to shoot RAW in that. But please do.
You know, I think Charlie shoots in RAW, because I can remember during our recent flower show, she was sending pictures from her phone, and we were having issues with it, and that's because her phone was sending them in the cameras, in the phone's RAW format. So
there's also an app.
How to set that.
There's an app that's somewhere on my phone, and I'll look for it and tell you guys when I find it.
Yeah, there are two apps that I think that every iPhone user should have, and that is the Camera Plus app.
I think that's the one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think most of us have it, at least those of us in Seattle.
Yes. And there's another one. Where's my photography?
There's a new version, Karen. It's Camera Plus and then a 2.
Yes, that's the one that I have, Mary. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
There's one more, and I'll send an email about it, okay? Because there's one that Charles Needle was recommending.
Yes.
The Average Camera Pro, that one?
Yes, Camera Pro.
Yeah, and that you can do multiple images with that one.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he recommended both of those. Yeah.
Exactly. And Camera Plus I had been aware of, as well as Camera Pro actually, but I haven't been doing any iPhoneography lately. So, but I did put them on my camera.
In the hospital.
The one I have is Halide, Halide, and that shoots in RAW.
Oh, very good. Okay, thank you, Jolie.
Okay.
Is that an app, Jolie?
That's an app, yes.
Oh, okay.
Would you mind saying that again, Jolie, please?
It's Halide, Halide.
So not to be obnoxious, Jolie, but that word is halide, and it comes from silver halide prints.
Okay.
So speaking of hospital,
time in Dubai.
speaking of hospital and iPhones and cameras, I was livid because all this time when they put me in the hospital for these little short stints, they're putting me in there on surgery watch, which means you can't have anything with you.
Oh, yeah.
And so until they take me up to a room, I can't have any of my possessions. And not this past time, but the time before, after I'd been surgery watch for hours and hours and hours and hours, they took me up to my room and there was a spectacular photo in the elevator. And I couldn't make a photo of it, I mean, other than to remember it. And it just for 5 floors as I'm going up, I'm thinking, this is killing me. It was a piece of aluminum that was in the back of the elevator, but it was warped and bent, and whatever was behind was being reflected in this warped aluminum in a way that looked exactly like the most beautiful layered mountain landscape that you can imagine. And it just kept changing and morphing, and it just got better and better. And I'm like,
You gone to your room and said, I need to go back to that elevator, and with my phone.
I know, but they wouldn't let me. I tried because it's the elevator that goes down to the surgery area, and they would not let me.
Oh, don't they understand these things?
No. All right, my dears. We've been having fun for an hour and a half, and I love it. And so I thank you for that. Is everybody okay to, let me stop my share here. Okay, now I'm going to look on the calendar. Is everybody okay for tomorrow at the same time and then Saturday for the last one? Or do you want to have a couple of days in the meantime?
I'm not able to do either one. I'm going to be going out of town tomorrow and I'll be back on Sunday. I might be able to Zoom in the car. I don't know if you can do that.
Yes, you can.
I might be able to do Thursday, but I can't do Saturday.
Okay.
So I can always look at the recording afterwards.
I mean, do I move Saturday to Sunday? Does that offend anyone?
No.
Okay.
Well,
All the exciting lives we're all leading.
Really?
Well, I'll actually, won't be in the car until, probably noontime. But that I don't want to change everything for everybody else. I can look at a recording as well.
Well, that's no fun. I mean, it doesn't bother me to move it to Sunday the 12th if it doesn't bother you.
But the Sunday the 12th, I couldn't do it until noon my time. But that might, I don't want to change everybody's schedule. I can easily look at the recording.
Okay. Well, and we can go over everything in our one-on-one as well. Okay, so in that instance, I'm going to leave it on Saturday. Okay.
Oh, Saturday.
Susie, I'm sorry about that.
That's fine. That's
okay, fine. So tomorrow at the same time, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And then Saturday will be our final. And next week, if anyone is having any trouble whatsoever, just wants some extra assistance, we'll work in one-on-ones, okay?
Saturday is noon too?
Saturday is noon as well, Sherwood, thank you.
Okay.
And we have the webinar on Friday, right?
And we have the webinar on Friday. Let me not fail to mention that. The webinar on Friday, which is at 1 Eastern and 10 a.m. Pacific, features Mark Muse and Robert Clark, and they are good buddies of mine, but much more importantly, they are fabulous photographers, and they're going to speak to us about their process, the work that they like to do, and specifically about the value of photographing the same thing or the same place over and over and over. And I don't mean like over a couple of days. I mean, they've been photographing the Antietam battlefield for the last 15 years. And in my opinion, the results that they've gotten over these last 2 years far exceed anything they did in the prior 13. And maybe they're just going to make smart old men, as my dad used to say. But no, the work is outstanding, absolutely outstanding. And so I'm anxious to share their talents with you. And if we have time, they're going to get into what they do to refine their printmaking. They're both incredible printmakers, and they have a very refined workflow and technique with their camera craft as well. And so it'll open up a few new thoughts for you. And my feeling is that there's so much material that they're going to want to give that this will probably end up being a two-part thing. And so Friday the 10th at 1 p.m. Eastern and at 10 a.m. Pacific, we'll have Mark Muse and Bob Clark. And if you go to my website, you can read their biographies. They're kind of interesting, more than kind of, they're very interesting. And the only other thing I would ask you to do is to share that with your friends, because I do have the new feature on the site that people can sign up for just one lecture or for a series of 3, whatever they choose. And so it's not a whole year-long commitment thing. And so if you'll do that, that'll help me out. And it'll help the Pacific Northwest Art School, because a very hefty portion of the net proceeds from all of the creative conversations, as well as all of my classes, go to the Pacific Northwest Art School. Okay.
Karen, did you say Saturday we're going at noon?
No, Saturdays at 9 a.m. regular time for Photoshop class.
Okay, good. Okay. For some reason I thought I heard noon.
That was for Eastern time.
Right. Oh, thank you.
And will those, will that recording, when will that recording of Saturday's class be available on your website?
That recording should be available on Monday evening.
Okay.
Okay. And there are a bunch of new recordings up, both for the Lightroom and the Photoshop class and the bookmaking class, but you're probably not interested in that at this point. So that'll be for another time.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you so much. And I will see you tomorrow, and email me any questions in the meantime, and we'll do some more fun things. Okay.
Well.
Good to see you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.